guys, for Dallas, let's go to the bright spots because there were some bright spots.
I think for Dallas, the first thing that stood out to me as we saw how much success Boston had in the game one with having Drew Holiday or Derek White in the dunker spot, they did feel more intentional about keeping Daniel Gafford in particular closer to the basket, having some pass-offs there. Whoever's in the corner against him, like, I will just stay here. Sometimes that is Al Horford. Sometimes that's Kristaps. Sometimes that's just Drew Holiday, but I'm staying right here. So they did at least try to limit some of that, and the efficiency on those pick and rolls were lower in game 2 versus game 1 when I looked that up. And then a smaller thing for me, brought it up on the game 1 reaction pod, with Boston bringing so much of the full court pressure, just the backcourt pressure against Luka. It did feel like they were more intentional about some of the early hit aheads, or, okay, fine, we'll just let PJ Washington bring this ball up. There was a late turnover in the fourth quarter with PJ doing a little bit too much against Drew Holiday. But overall, let's get some quicker outlets so we can at least have a chance to get into our offense versus spending 6 seconds with Luka dealing with Jaylen Brown. Now we're trying to poke at whatever matchup it is with Boston switching the way that they were in game 1 in particular, with some of the pre-switching that we saw when they were trying to get Kristaps in action. Let's at least try to cut down some of our time in terms of the possession count. And then just with Luka in general, like, he just had it going inside the arc early on. Really set the tone there. So it was nice to see, if this is the game plan, if you're not going to show this kind of help, and as Steve mentioned, they did start sprinkling some more in and being really diligent about that. But if this is the game plan, I'm not looking to find a balance right now. I'm just going to hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you until you do something else. So at least you can take some solace in Luka kind of taking on the channels there.
It felt like Dallas's battleground to win this series in that first quarter. It felt like their defense was more comfortable. Nekias mentioned how they worked to try and fix their rotations, keep size in the paint, and take away the dunker spot. But it felt like the second and third efforts were better, or at least more consistent. There was more effort to, okay, we switch, you drive, I'll just take this drive, now we'll flow back out. You saw more of those consistent plays. The rotations felt more decisive as far as, okay, whoever's in the low man, if Lively or Gafford switches onto Tatum or Brown, force that left, Luka, go ahead and pull over, and now we'll play out of it, and we'll trust that we can make the rotations over and over again. So to have that difference between game 1 and game 2, I think, is key, because in game 1, it felt like Dallas was all over the place defensively. Boston was able to get whatever rotation they wanted out of Dallas, and they played out of it. Now you kind of have more of that automatic we've seen from Dallas in this run, so that's a plus for them. I also think offensively, PJ Washington looked to be more aggressive at the start. I'm going to try and put my head down and drive. I'm going to try and take some of these threes, maybe mix in a post up. That's a positive. I think, you mentioned Luka. Kyrie had some pretty good drives early. And so if he can now get paint touches, I think that's key. Like, if we're talking about how do you shift Boston, how do you get them in rotation, I think Dallas has to find a way to get drives. Above the break threes, key. But can we mix in some drives? Can we get someone to help? Can we commit and score some points that way? So I think if Dallas can defend at a certain level, they give themselves a chance. And I think when JJ mentioned how Joe Mazzulla said time and score dictate things, if it's a fourth quarter close game and you have Luka playing at this level and maybe Kyrie's playing at a different level, there is an opportunity there. So if you're Dallas, you just have to figure out how to get there. I think the defense is going to give you wiggle room offensively. If this is a series now where Boston feels more comfortable helping off PJ Washington or Green or Derrick Jones, you go back to the same question we've asked all playoffs. Can you make them pay? They start to make them pay, things might feel a little different.
Yeah, you bring up the sort of end game stuff. Can we get to that portion of the game and have some semblance of I don't know, whether it's control because you had the lead or you're within striking distance because it's a one-possession game. Think about when Drew and Derek get that steal, Drew hits the 3. Right after that, Derek White hit his 3, and it felt like curtains, right? And Boston goes to the stagnant, let's try to find Tatum, let's get him the ball, and it's like 2 or 3 really bad possessions in a row. And then all of a sudden, again, it becomes like a 5-point game. So I think Dallas has to feel good. Like, if we can get to the last 5 minutes and have Luka and Kyrie close it, they have to feel like they have an advantage. And look, Jaylen, he had the big lefty lay. Of course, Derek White gets the block on PJ Washington. But I do think Dallas still feels comfortable in that setting, particularly after the way those last few minutes went offensively for Boston. My big question to you is this. We talk about rotations. I agree with you, Steve. Dallas's rotations were much better. Their second efforts were much better. Some of it was Boston missed shots. And I feel like when even in reviewing tape, it would be like, oh, this rotation's good. But like these are NBA guys. Like you can rotate your ass off and they can drill a three, right? They still created, I think it was 39 threes, correct? They still created 39 threes. I think I'll just say it. I'm not sure Dallas, we can make any adjustment. We can be great in rotations. We can make some above the break threes. I don't know that Dallas can win 4 of the next 5 if they can't stay in front of the fucking basketball. And the blow-by rate right now, across the board, extremely high. Luka's blow-by rate, also very high. It feels like whenever they want, they can get certain guys on the basketball, and Luka being one of them, get past that person and get 2 on the basketball, finish at the rim, get fouled, spray, get out in rotation. If you can't stay in front of the basketball with that spacing, I think you're going to have a hard time winning 4 out of 5.
I think that's extremely fair, and it makes sense. I have a question to bounce off that.
Okay.
If you're Dallas, do you look at the first 2 games and start to dial the help back a little bit and put Boston in a scenario where, okay, you now feel like this is an automatic driving kick for you. We work better to contain the ball, but we also just try and contest, try and stay at home, try and get back out to those sprays. Is that something that they could mix in to try and keep Boston off balance, or is this just the terms of the series?
Tatum missed, I know he missed at least 3 where they brought a help defender and he missed a layup. You know, he made a midair adjustment or reversed it. And he missed a layup. He may have missed 4. That's 8 points if you don't bring the help defender. The one time where it gets a little is when they go to the wing ISO and they bring the guard into the strong side dunker spot, right? I think there's a way to sort of like manipulate that a little bit. But even Drew and Derek, they're so good at sort of relocating out of that. Game 1, Drew had 2 or 3 baskets around the rim just on strong side dunker spot in isolation. Otherwise, if you're sort of like, let's say the same spacing, Jayson Tatum gets middle and you're just like showing help but getting out to shooters, I'm confident Jayson Tatum's going to finish at the rim. Right? If you're not going to really commit to the help. I think they played 14 possessions of zone from February 10th to the end of the regular season. Then there was the one game in the Oklahoma City Thunder series where they played like 31 possessions. Is zone an option? Like, I think it's ball containment. It's ball containment. That's the key to this whole thing for Dallas.